I was a police officer in Alaska. I served a 20-year career. Most of my career I was a detective. It was my dream from being probably a teenager that I wanted to be a police officer. I was drawn to that line of work. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to give a voice to those who no longer had a voice. They told us in the academy that you were one of the best of the best. You're one out of 100 that made it. Out of 1,000 plus applicants. To be sitting in that academy that day on the first day was an honor. And from that very first day in the academy, I decided that I wanted to be a homicide detective. That was my goal. I had always wanted to move to Alaska, and I was able to do that. And then I also had the dream of becoming a police officer. And so the two I felt would be perfect and would go hand in hand. I could live in Alaska, in a place I wanted to be, enjoy all the outdoor activities, and also serve my calling and become a police officer up there. I didn't know at the time, but Alaska is one of the most violent states in the nation. They lead in homicide, sexual assault, and missing women. And it was every day was extreme violence, day in and day out. I was a Christian when I went up to Alaska. I accepted the Lord when I was 7 years old, baptized when I was 8 years old. And so I've always had that faith, but I haven't been always obedient. I've always wanted to do the right thing, and I've always had a heart for people, maybe not in the same way as everyone else, but deep down in me, I've always believed in justice and what that means and how important it is in a free society. So my goal from the first day in the academy was to become a homicide detective, and I plotted out a path that I thought would be the best way for me to achieve that goal. And for me, that was through training, education, and experience. We had a crime scene team, which was an additional assignment. And essentially what it was, when there was a major crime, like a homicide, for example, it was the CSI team that would go out on the ground and document and collect the evidence and work through that crime scene in tandem with the detectives. It was some of the hardest work that I've ever done because you're on call, you're out there at night, 24/7, all different kinds of weather conditions. But the biggest toll was just looking at that extreme violence and spending hours and hours and hours in that environment, in the crime scene environment, looking at and smelling and just absorbing everything that happened where you were at and what happened to another human being, and just trying to deal with that as well as do your job professionally and collect the evidence and take the photos. And this went on over and over and over again, hundreds and hundreds of crime scenes. One of the memories that I have that really impacted me, I was on the crime scene team and there was a serial killer, and he happened to kill a woman in the community, and it was a brutal case. And he ended up kidnapping her and then dumping her body in the woods, and she was found a couple months later. And so I was on that team, and we spent 2 days out there in the woods where she was found. And one of the things that I had to do, it was up close and personal, documenting that scene, and I had to lift her body for the last time from that scene so that she could be properly taken away respectfully for further investigation. And that scene and seeing her and what had been done to her, what another human being could do to somebody, it really struck a chord with me. And it really impacted me. And it's something that I haven't forgotten. The Lord was always there, but I didn't seek Him out as I should have. What I did see, there was a spiritual aspect to it, to all those crime scenes, and it was just the expression of evil, the realization that there is true evil here on this earth. And I was able to see that firsthand, because you can talk about it, you can read about it, you can think about it, you can watch it on TV, but actually being out there in real life and seeing this battle that's going on to this day between good and evil, there is such a thing as good and evil. And when I did become a homicide detective, I did achieve my goal. And that's when it got real, more so than any other time in my career. I really got to see evil. I really got to spend time with evil men, hours and hours and hours, trying to interview them in a room, trying to get them to admit their deepest, darkest fears, their deepest, darkest secrets, and to ultimately admit what they did to another human being and how they killed somebody. And I've had men demonstrate to me how they've killed people. And after a while, that becomes unhealthy. And you don't realize it at the time because you're just doing your job. And I knew in my mind, though, that it was a battle of good and evil. I knew that God was out there and that there were still bad things going on. So as I worked through my time in the homicide unit, I noticed things weren't right with me. And I didn't know right away. It snuck up on me. And I realized it started off by not being able to sleep. I would get up at 2 in the morning and I couldn't go back to sleep. And I had to go to work the next day. And I was up for 24 hours before I could go back to bed again. And this happened over and over and over again. I just couldn't sleep right. This tremendous fear would come over me for no reason. And I would just start trembling. My hand would start just shaking for no reason. I had trouble just going out in public after a while and being around large crowds of people. I had trouble going into Costco. Just fear for no reason. Inability to concentrate. I mean, I stopped reading books. I was an avid reader. I couldn't even get through a book. I couldn't even read a paragraph. And so I really started wondering what was going on. And I started researching PTSD because I've heard about it. I was told about it. You hear about it all the time. But for me, the symptoms weren't obvious until that one point where I just started waking up at 2 in the morning and I realized, wait a minute, I have every single symptom of PTSD that you can have. And I was a mess. And then I questioned how did I get here? First I tried fixing it myself. Like, okay, I'm gonna be trying to avoid crowds, or I'm going to, I'm gonna try whatever. But that didn't work because I still had to go to work every day. And I still had to keep doing what I was doing and see what I was seeing. And so the self-help part of it didn't work. And I was at almost the end of my career with only a few years left before retirement. So I certainly was not going to tell anybody. And so I just gutted it out. And I did look into some programs, and I did go to a program. It was a week-long program for law enforcement and military that addressed some of the issues. And it wasn't a bad program by any means. And it made you realize that you weren't alone, that everybody has the same symptoms that you do. From police officers all around the world. And they'll independently talk to you and tell you what's bothering them, and it's the exact same checklist that I have. So it's a real thing, and it's a serious thing, and it affects probably everybody. If you're honest about what you do and about your career and about what you've seen, and if you're honest with yourself, there's a good chance that you are experiencing those symptoms. And if you say that you're fine, you're not being honest, especially if you're doing this kind of work and you see what we see in this line of work. You're going to experience these symptoms: anxiety, flashbacks, irritability, inability to sleep, anger, fear, frustration, and there's suicide. People turn to drinking, they turn to other means. It's trauma, it's a brain injury, and it's soul trauma. And humans weren't meant to experience that level of continued violence over the course of a 20-year career. It's cumulative. And so I had it in my own mind that I would find my own cure. That was my first go-to. Because these coping mechanisms didn't work. Like, it was a Band-Aid for a huge problem. And I tried all the coping mechanisms that I was taught. And to a degree, it may have helped me feel better every now and then, but it was not a cure at all. And so I thought that I'm just going to go to a beach and sit on the beach and enjoy the sun and retire, and all my problems would go away and I'd become a normal person again. But that wasn't the case. And the symptoms actually got worse when I retired. And I became angrier and more afraid and more upset and more fearful. So after I retired, I did go to an island. It wasn't the island that I thought I would go to and sit on the beach. But things then started happening and coming together for me. And I became part of a church body who cared about me and who actually took the time to gain my trust and to spend the time with me so I would be comfortable, and I was comfortable enough to talk to them about some of the issues that had happened. I was given a book about PTSD and about healing and learning about soul injuries and trauma from a biblical perspective and how it affects a person. And that really started to open up my eyes. And the light bulb came on that I'd been doing it all wrong, and I'd been trying to solve it myself or using other ways to solve it when there is only one answer to solving that problem. It was God all along. I met with this pastor, and it wasn't him, it was the Holy Spirit through him, and he prayed over me. I didn't know this man, but I believed that God can heal. I was hungry to receive that healing. And I was just so ready to have all this pain just lifted from my shoulders. And I was ready, and I took it very seriously because I wanted to be healed. And I knew there was just something I could tell that, like, this was real. This was the real deal. And it was nothing weird or crazy or out of the ordinary. It was just very simple, just a basic prayer. But I knew the meaning of it. I knew how important it was, and that's why I had a tremendous reverence and respect for that moment. So a couple days go by, and maybe by day 2, I start to feel a little different. My mind, when I wake up, it's clear. I can actually think like normally, like I used to. And I'm just feeling better. I had chronic nerve pain because of this. In my leg, I could barely walk at times. And soon thereafter, I knew, and I had no symptoms. I was healed completely. And I knew, and my mind was clear, and I was able to start doing some of the things that I used to do that I couldn't do. And even like a month ago, I read my first book, and I just devoured it within a day. And I hadn't done that in years. So I knew, and it was a miracle. And so it's a difficult hurdle to admit to yourself and to recognize, hey, these symptoms are here and they're real. And then you have to have the desire to want to get better again, because you know how you felt before all this. I knew how I felt before this, when I thought I was a normal person. The answer was right in front of me, and that was Jesus.